And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Art Business Academy Q&A session. Today is Friday, April 5th, 2019. It is good, as always, to be here with you in another session. And as I mentioned in our broadcast a couple weeks ago, we were off last week, and then also in the email this week, our session today is going to be talking about artist in residency programs. And in specific, we're going to be welcoming a guest who just recently completed a residency program. She's going to share with us her experiences and kind of some of the ins and outs of that experience. But as we get started, artist in residency programs there's something that fall a little bit outside of what we're typically talking about and doing here in the Art Business Academy, where we're focusing primarily on marketing, promoting, getting your work into galleries. But we do talk about the importance of spending time in the studio, producing artwork, developing your craft, building consistency in the work, doing everything you need to do to get your artwork ready. And one of the most common challenges that I hear artists mentioning is, I just can't seem to find enough time in the studio to get everything done that I'd like to get done, to produce the way I would like to be focused the way I want to be focused. And a residency program, it would certainly be an example of kind of taking it to the extreme, where you're stepping out of your daily life and really being able to devote yourself fully to your artwork for an extended period of time. And so I know this topic has raised a lot of curiosity and questions, and I know that a lot of you are interested in this. And so it's my pleasure to welcome our guest for this session, Linda Ryan. Linda is an artist out of California and is going to share with us an experience that she recently completed working out of a residency program in California. Good morning, Linda. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. So let's before we jump in and talk about the residency program. You're a longtime Art Business Academy member, but we do have a number of newer members here who maybe don't know you as well. So give us just a little bit of a brief background about you and your studio, where you're located, what kind of work you're doing, and then we'll jump in and talk about the residency.
So I live and work in Livermore, California, which is as far east as you can be and still be in the San Francisco East Bay. And forgive me today, right now we're having oak blooming season and I'm really allergic. So if I sneeze or blow, I'll try to do it off camera. I've been painting since I turned 40. It's been almost 20 years, or it's been 20 years. Wow. And I used to do strictly figurative and abstract figurative dancers, and did fairly well at selling them, but at way below gallery prices, and lived off my art for about 3 years during that time period. But since then, my gallery closed, and since then I have had to, I took a long-term job at an art gallery or art center, and didn't have much time for painting. And when I finally did decide, okay, I've got to really get back into this, I had, through circumstances, ended up exploring pouring as a medium. Helen is telling us she's not getting any audio, by the way.
Yeah, I see that. And if obviously it doesn't do us any good to say what to do if you can't hear what we're saying anyway. But I suspect that Helen, if she hops over to the audio or just the video stream without being in live, will get audio. I'm assuming that everyone else can hear us. Give me a thumbs up if you've got audio from us. So it sounds like it might just be an issue with Helen's connection. So.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I started pour painting, which is where you mix paint. You don't use brushes and you pour it. And
And you're working horizontally on a horizontal surface.
And it then became, instead of just continuing, hi Helen, instead of just continuing with abstract pouring, which is mainly what's going on with the with the craze of pour painting, I decided to start to learn. I wanted to learn imagery. I wanted it to be more challenging and actually very difficult. But since then, and since becoming a member of the Art Academy here, I've been really going gangbusters with the pour painting and with getting them into galleries. I'm in a couple of galleries right now, and one of them's in Laguna Beach, which is a really nice place to be. And but segueing that to the Artist in Residence program, when I turned 40 was when I started to paint, and that's when I first learned that you could actually do an Artist in Residence program. And I promised myself at that point, because that was one of those years or one of those time periods where there were so many family illnesses and things that I had to take care of, that I had no time for myself, that if I hadn't gotten to the point where I wanted to be with my art by the time I was 60, I would do one of those residence programs, because it just seemed like a dream to be able to actually focus on work and do your, just go deeply into it. Is that enough, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, that gives us a good sense. We're going to see some images of some of your work and get a little bit more of a sense of that and the program. And so, you know, you've long wanted to participate in an artist in residence program. And I guess I'd backtrack to that. How did you first hear about artist in residence programs? Did you know someone who did something, or did you see a similar program somewhere else?
I had enrolled in college painting courses, and some of the students were talking about doing that for the summer while they were off. And that's when I thought, wow, you could go do this. And I picked up a couple of books. Now you can find it all over online, but back then it wasn't quite as prevalent. And I learned about all kinds of different artist programs you can do. There's ones that they're usually, a lot of them are, if it's a tourist area, it's their off season. Some places will actually pay you and give you room and board. Especially places like, there's a couple places in Kansas I saw that will give you a nice long term.
Yeah, I bet.
And there are some places in Kansas that I'm sure would be a wonderful place to be, but it's not like going to a tourist destination where, especially with the ocean, which is what I really needed. And
so as you got to a point where you decided, okay, I'm interested now in pursuing this opportunity, how many different programs did you apply for? How did you learn about the one that you eventually ended up receiving the residency?
So I knew about a lot of them, but when I had another really bad year in 2014, and I went to Mendocino in 2015, a collector had offered me her Airbnb at this really ridiculously low price so that I could spend a week there and just chill and paint. And I had never been to Mendocino. I mean, I've been all over California coast, I thought, but never been to Mendocino. And I fell in love with it. And I really, really fell in love with I became haunted by the rocks, the big, huge rocks, and the ocean pounding on them, and the power of that. And
so while you're saying that, I think this is a good time to kind of bring up an image so that people can understand the work you're doing and why that would be of an appeal. And then I'm just going to kind of run. Linda sent me a slide deck with some various images, and rather than us go through the slide deck and explain each image, I'm just going to kind of run the images in rotation as you're talking, Linda, and as we have the discussion.
Sounds good. So I got there and I couldn't paint, which has rarely ever happened to me in my life. Usually, even after a long period of time, I've been able to jump in and paint. But everything I tried to do around these rocks was very trite and thin, and it just wasn't. It wasn't satisfactory. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to go into town and go get coffee and go to the art center. And I went to the art center and had a really nice tour of the place. And she showed me all these art studios that are there that you can rent. You know, you can rent them for like 2 weeks and stay at the center and in these really inexpensive little places. And so I was really interested in that. And I got pricing from her. And she said, you know, you really should think about applying for the Artist in Residence program. She said the painting is, they don't take as many painters so that it's really competitive. But if you really focus on your application, and, you know, I'd shown her a couple of my images and told her about what I wanted to do. And so that's when I learned about this program, and this is where I wanted to go. Okay, see here, this is where the high school track is on the north side there. The art center is just below that, and we're on the same street that runs down to the point of the headlands. So Mendocino is only a few streets long. You can tell by this. It's very isolated, very small community.
And so kind of amazing that they would even have an arts center, a community this small.
It was started in the 60s by I think he was an ex-hippie from San Francisco, and
is it possible to be an ex-hippie, Linda? I'm not sure that's the right.
I was always a wannabe. Yeah. He came up here and he thought this would make a great arts colony. It was on the grounds of, I don't know if you guys have seen East of Eden, but the mansion, the main mansion that the whole thing happens around, was where the art center is. There's still a few surviving buildings. And that had burned down. And he bought the place for a crazy amount, invited all kinds of artists up. And up until then, this had been fishing, not as much fishing, but mostly logging community. And a lot of that industry had gone away at that point, or was going away. So it was a really struggling community, and the arts just really revitalized the community. Okay, marijuana helped as well, but
sure.
it's you know, it's that whole green belt up there. But the logging was going away. The arts came in. It became known as a mecca for artists, and it was very kind of open community. There's like artist communes down in Albion. I think one is still going. Anyway, it's just it's still known as a mecca for artists, and part of that is the whole ambiance there. There's like, you do have some really beautiful sunny days, which you treasure, and everybody gets out. But it's often really misty, and if it's not misty, it's cloudy, rainy. You know,
yeah, it's a lot of atmosphere.
It's very atmospheric, and it's really conducive to the arts. There's like a huge amount of different types of arts in that area. So anyway,
with your application, once you knew you wanted to participate, what did you do? What was the application process like? And you already mentioned that you anticipated it being pretty competitive. So what was it in your application that you feel helped it stand out?
Okay, so from what I've seen, an application for a residence program is pretty straightforward. It's basically your background, and you have to submit your CV and all that other stuff, which is really nice to have worked up with you. But they also ask for a letter of intent, And a letter of intent, when you're talking a creative pursuit, is very different from a letter of intent when you're trying to get a software company, get funding for a software company.
Sure.
But the three parts of it are still the same, which is the what you want to do, and be really clear about what you want to do. The more clear you can get, the better. How you're going to do it, and again, more clear picture of how you're going to make this happen, and then how do you measure success. So you need those three parts, and that's just the one part out of the application. Then you have to have letters of recommendation, and it's a good idea to try to get letters of recommendation that exhibit your strengths and the things that will help you accomplish this. So you want it more. You want to make sure it's about your art, but it's also about you able to make things happen. And
your follow through and professionalism and those kinds of things.
That kind of thing, exactly. And then what's the you have to have really good, strong photographs. And what I made sure to do, I'll go back and talk about the letter of intent a little bit more in depth. But what I made sure to do with the photos was to make sure that they kind of followed a trajectory, that they could see that this is where I was coming from. This is how I'd been working through it with the process of pouring medium, because it's hardly anybody understands what this medium is about, and then how you could see a trajectory of where I might take it based on what the letter of intent said. So those three things are really important: the letter of intent, the letters of recommendation, and then your photographs. And if they can help support each other, that it's going to be more successful. So my letter of intent, I talked about what I wanted to do was to capture the power and the sense of motion and the immediacy of walking around at the Mendocino coast and Northern California coast, but specifically that area.
And do you think it helped that your intention and what you're going to be working on is directly related geographically to the area where the art center is located?
Exactly. If I was going to go do Camelback Mountain in Scottsdale in Mendocino, I really want to paint. That's not going to. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, that was the part that I left off. Sorry about that, but good for you for adding that in. So the intent was to do that, and then talked specifically about the process that I wanted to develop, but also by walking around and doing hiking and going down to the beaches and just spending time at the headlands to get that that sense of power and the lighting and the palette in my visual memory. I really kind of needed to be in that place geographically, yes. So that does help if you're looking for an artist in residence in a specific space. At least I believe it would help. I'm sure there's other. Anyway, and then the how I would know that it was a success. But I specifically wanted 4 really strong paintings that spoke to this exactly. And
how did you I guess a couple of questions. Had you done other applications in the past? And how did you kind of get a sense of how to put this application together? What was your process for kind of navigating and figuring out the direction that you wanted to go with the application?
Well, I looked a lot on the internet. That really helped. There's a lot of information out there. The other part was in talking to she was a I can't remember her direct title, but she was like the admin assistant to the executive director there. Man, really, it was just reasoning it out. It was thinking about it and thinking about what, if I were, and maybe I have a leg up on that because I've run an art center before, but if I were running this, what would I be looking for? I'd want follow through. I would want, these different things. So I tried to establish. I just did a lot of thought through it,
Yeah.
But the internet helped.
Huh. And kind of give us a little bit of a timeline of when you first started thinking about the program, how long it took to put the application together, and then what was the timeline from that point until you were selected and the program actually started.
I learned about it in 2015, in early 2015, and thought about it a lot. Tried to paint those rocks at home, or in my studio, was not working at all. And we went and picked up an application. I went back and visited again in late 2017, and no, 2016. Wow. And I looked at that application again, and I thought, I am going to do this. And so by the time I submitted the application would be in April of 2017, and I was notified that I was accepted in June
of 2017.
Yeah. And then the program started October 1st and went through
October 1st of 2018. So
2017.
Oh, 2017. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then it went through the end of April 2018. So
yeah. So a significant residence. And obviously not every one of them is going to be quite that long. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about the ins and outs of the duration of the residency.
Yeah. Good.
And so you find out you're selected. That date is coming up, that the programs begin. What is your preparation from selection to kind of get everything geared up and get ready to go and get ready to kind of make the move over there and set up shop?
Excessive obsessive planning. Lots of lists. If artists do plan to go to do a residence program, I think it's a good idea to go check the place out in person and make sure, because there is way up that road, up the highway, there's a one artist supply store. You have to bring, so for Mendocino especially, you really need to bring, especially if you have a lot of material that is
specific kind of to what you're doing, or unique in any way.
Right. Then you need to make sure to pack that up. There were times where I had to empty out my studio, most of my studio, for various things. That didn't happen very often, but often enough to where I packed up several boxes of things that I didn't want to bring up until after the Thanksgiving holiday. So that I had things figured out, what was going to go where and when I would need this and when I would need that. It was more like it was a lot of planning.
Yeah, a lot of orchestration and timing to get it to work. And this kind of maybe getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but how much of the your vision of what you would be doing and all the planning that you were doing kind of ahead of time, how much of that matched up to what actually occurred during the program? Were you able to hold pretty firmly to the plan you'd had ahead of time, or did you end up adapting to the realities of the circumstances and the experience?
It was a combination of both of those. There were several paintings that I had been working on that I expected that I would spend time working on. That's downtown Mendocino. But I didn't. A lot of those I just didn't even touch. So those were kind of a waste of of packing. But I did, and it took months to really get into it. And I think part of it was spending so many months not painting and just planning and being very, very, very left-brained for several months. It was really hard to get in there and make any art. It all just was really thin. And I think one of the mistakes I made then that I would change in the future is that I would take some things up there that I could just play on, and instead of expecting to make art, just go there.
Great art. Yeah.
Get that flow going, because it didn't happen until after the holidays that I really got, it happens to everybody. I know that inability to actually really get in and make any art once in a while. But when it happens on a long-term basis, I began to feel like a fraud, and I'm like surrounded by all these art things, and
well, there's got to be some pressure on you, just in terms of, here I am with this incredible opportunity, and a long timeline in this case, a little bit longer than probably some other programs, but a very definitive period where I've got to imagine that the pressure to be taking advantage of every moment makes it maybe even a little harder to get things up and running and started, and just makes it a greater challenge.
Yeah. And it may be that a 3-month would be actually better because you have a shorter term to be able. That's right behind the center, by the way. You might have more of an impetus to actually just get in there and work. I don't know. Everybody's going to be different.
Yeah. So kind of talk about then the mechanics of you've done the preparation, and now it's time to load up and head over there. What were the mechanics of getting yourself moved over there, and how did that process go?
There were ravens there all over the place, by the way. It took just several trips. Luckily, I have a wonderful partner who was really behind this whole thing, and he left me there the first week, midweek, and went and grabbed a bunch of this stuff, my second trip or my second load, and he helped me drag stuff up the stairs into my apartment. The logistics were, I just kind of don't even want to go other than that. That's from my landing right there. And that's the Art Center gallery. So by the time I really got into it, my studio is right downstairs. And if I got really into it, got up at 4 a.m. to see how they dried, and then realized, okay, it's 1 o'clock and I forgot to eat breakfast, and I'm still in my pajama sweats. My hair is sticking out all over the place, and I have to go walk up these stairs in front of all these gallery people. That was uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, and that kind of speaks to a bit of the opportunity, right? That you really are right there in your art, potentially, just steps away from the studio, and your whole purpose and focus during the whole time that you're there is on that the production of the art.
That was one of the most wonderful, intense, and exhausting times. That last 3 or 4 months was just incredible, and everything that I'd set out to do, I did, and it was really, it was so fulfilling. It was just like, yeah.
And what once you got there and got set up, what was kind of the daily rhythm of life that you established? What were those days like, and kind of how did you, where did you take your focus, and how long did it take to get kind of settled into things?
It depended. It depends on if, like I said, there were sometimes many days where I was just so into it that I didn't come out of the studio for anything. That's my studio downstairs and my apartment upstairs. Um, uh, but what I would try to do is walk out the other door of the studio. First thing in the morning, I'd come down, go through the studio, see how it dried, and try to make myself go outside and go down to the corner where from that intersection you could hear ocean waves crashing from all sides, and just stare down at the headlands that you could see from there. Maybe sometimes take a walk around then, but I would try and go and get some work in before I would go out and actually do any walking. There were classes that went on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then sometimes on the weekends. So my main painting days were Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesday morning, Thursday, Friday. And then those days I knew I could count on quiet time. They weren't going on in my classroom, but I shared one of those what's those doors, the folding screen door,
Accordion kind of.
yeah, with the art classroom. And because it was the winter season, the classes weren't that they weren't all over the place. But
and how many other artists were like you participating in the Artist in Residence program?
There were 9 full-time. So a lot of those were ceramicists. That's a huge part of this program, is the ceramics. And then there were 5, 6, 7 that floated in and out, that were on, a 1 week, or I think the shortest was 2 weeks, or 1 month. One person was there for 2 months. And a lot of those were the older artists. I was the oldest one there, that was there for a long term. There was another person, my Dos Lindas. You'll see a picture of her later. She's my buddy. She is a couple years younger than me. But it seems like people that want to stay there for a long period of time are not going to be over 60.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's, I mean, it's a commitment, right?
Yeah.
To be able to step away from your life. And certainly if you'd have to be in a position where you're not leaving a job or something like that to be able to make this kind of huge time commitment.
And usually you have, you rip yourself out of your life. You don't have your cats,
Yeah.
your bathtub, you don't have your own washing machine. It's just like, being a student again, which I never really did. So, yeah, I think it's probably a lot easier if you're used to not having your own room. You can have a dorm room. It's a lot. There's and if you're not used to, if you're not so embedded in your own life, it's not like 6 months or 7 months is not like a vacation.
Yeah.
It's a month would be more like a vacation, and maybe you can treat it that way, like it's a painting vacation. But yeah, this is a real commitment.
And kind of coming back to, kind of thinking about the other artists who were participating, how important was that aspect of it? Kind of the interacting with the other artists who were also there, and maybe in and out. Kind of the social side of the experience. How important was that to the overall success of the program?
The ceramicists went out a lot together. The rest of us were so like nose to the grindstone that we would force each other to, okay, let's go out now. So maybe once a month, that's my apartment, by the way, but maybe once a month we would, and not even that sometimes, I would go out for a drink or some appetizers, or I began this thing of, okay, it says in the list of things that we get is that we get peer reviews. So I need a peer review. So I would text the other artists and say, I need a peer review. We would all meet. But we had a movie night at my place, and we had a barbecue at a crazy barbecue, crazy dangerous barbecue. And it was good to get to know people, but everybody, and I don't know if it's this way with other artists in residence programs, but mostly people were really, really focused. So this is where you get to the point. I wanted to show this because you get to the point at some point where you just don't care what you look like.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's really interesting. And so even though you are there with other artists, it really is the focus, from what I'm hearing you say, is really very much on it's introspective and about developing your work and so were there times where you maybe felt a little bit isolated and challenges that way?
Oh, absolutely. I've never lived alone. So yes, isolated. Not only, I mean, you're out on this peninsula and the only ways in are bridges. So if there's a tsunami, you're dead. Okay, so I'm a little paranoid. But when you're doing something like this alone for a long, long period of time, and there's not a lot of distractions, there's really no one in your head but you. You confront yourself a lot. You are, and all your foibles, all of a sudden, you realize, okay, I am still that seventh grader. No matter how many accomplishments or anything else you've done, you're really just you. So there was a lot of getting, it was very different. It was getting to know myself again. And I hadn't realized that I didn't know myself.
And so kind of sitting, reflecting and looking back on it, what do you perceive to have been the kind of the highs of the experience, what you took out of it and what you gained during the process? And then I'll follow up that question with kind of the lows and the challenges.
Okay. So there were a lot of things, but the main highs, I would say, were learning how to dive in. I mean, I've always been able to challenge myself. Oh, let me tell you about that intersection. That's the intersection where you can go and you can hear all of okay, you can hear that's my intersection. That's where I went every morning. So the highs, where you dive in and into the art, and it nothing else exists, and you just become one with it. And I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but the thing that was really beneficial is not only achieving that there finally, but being able to take that home. And I mean, I'm working in my studio now, and I can much more easily access that space, and it just gave me a real sensibility about the work that's very different. Another good thing was I was having to be by myself. It was hard as heck, but it was really good. And one of the highlights was realizing how good, not highlights, but one of the most profound things was realizing how good my life actually is on a regular basis. No matter how much I love Mendocino or I love other places, man, I love coming home.
Yeah, I got to imagine that, and I'm going to ask you about that too. But nothing helps you see home like being away from it for a while.
Yeah.
And what about then kind of thinking of the flip side of it? What were the if you had to point to some downsides to having participated in an artist in residence program, what were the costs to you?
Oh, they would have been much less if I hadn't decided, okay, I'm 60 years old, almost, wasn't quite yet then. I wanted to be in a place that was comfortable and that Dwayne could come and visit, my partner, fiance now, I'm still not used to saying that, where he could come and visit and we could have like a really nice time cooking things together and going out, walking around. And I didn't want to be in a dorm program. I really don't want to share a room with somebody, some stranger, no matter how nice they are. So it could have been a lot less. I ended up paying about $1,000 a month for the apartment. I wouldn't have had to pay maybe, there's work you could do there to offset these things, and I didn't want to do it. So I chose probably the most expensive, actually the most expensive way to go. But so I'm paying for it still, but I'm fine.
And what about kind of the intangible costs? Obviously, you're getting some benefits in terms of being able to be really focused on your work, but you're also away from your studio and your life. And so, what were those intangibles that you felt like you were sacrificing in order to be able to do this?
That was a big one because all of a sudden, I had been really gung ho with your program and getting into galleries and pursuing things, and it did take me away from that. It took me. I went like really inward, and I didn't even want to post on Facebook, which I used to be a real big poster, and I tried to blog about the thing. I think I only put up 4 blogs about Mendocino. I did not promote sales, which is, how I tend to make most of my money is through art sales. So in that regard, if you're really working hard on your art career, you may not want to do a whole 7-month program. It did take away from sales. It's starting to catch up. But then again, it's going into summer season, and that's when beach galleries start to sell. So,
and then in terms of kind of thinking about the work itself, the art itself. Do you feel like the program and being able to spend so much time focused on your work, do you feel like you took a major leap forward in terms of kind of the technical aspects of your work and your vision of your work, that would kind of be commensurate with the amount of time and effort that you put into the program?
Absolutely. And I'm kind of pioneering this type of painting, or different methods in this type of painting, and it's to have that kind of focus has been really invaluable. It's also I never really do. I don't have an art degree. I don't have but it's something that I can have on my resume that says, I did this 7-month thing, and this is what came out of it. It's not just the resume; it's the art. It really is. The art has been, it's pretty cool. I can look at it and think, okay, all right, I could die tomorrow. I did that.
And if you were, kind of looking back over the whole experience, and an artist came to you, say one of the fellow members of the academy came to you and said, "Okay, I'm thinking about doing an artist in residence program. Maybe it's 7 months or maybe it's less than that. But if they came to you and asked for some advice, what can I do to get the most out of this experience? What might you have done differently that I should focus on doing? What advice would you give to someone who's getting ready to embark on a program like this?"
Oh, when you first get there, I remember something to play with. Remember some kind of art that you can do that you can just play on and get those creative juices moving, so that you don't feel like you have to do like art right off the bat. I mean, it's like, okay, go be right brain, go be great. Okay. How do you do that? But the other part is, what did I want to say? Make sure you have something creative and somewhat engaging to do when you especially are towards the end of it. I know that sounds odd, but you can't, no matter how insanely driven you are, and I can get there, you need to have something that will let you stop working on it for a bit, because you need to be able to be fresh and at the next work session. And I found that I was working on a video. I'm not very good at it, but it was like a little promo video for our artist in residence program, and that would allow me to step away from the 6 to 9 paintings that I had going at a time, and go, okay, all right, you just got to stop. That's one of my classes right there. And this is in my studio. So I would say make sure to, and maybe try to connect more with the other artists without being a pest, because I mean, they need their focus time also. But, I do really value my friendships that I've made from there, and especially the one with Linda. We kind of went through something special there.
And so you've already just hinted at and talked a little bit about that coming back to your studio after it was over, that you were then able to more easily kind of find focus and dive in and really be intensely into the work. But tell us a little bit about that. It must have been a little bit of an odd experience packing up and heading back home, and then all of a sudden, hey, here I am thrown back into the life that I had before. How changed did you feel you were after the experience?
Hugely.
And has that stuck?
Yes, I still am like, part of it is getting so into your own skin, and also opening up your senses. I mean, this is an area where you're like not, there's nature all around you. The ocean is everywhere. There's redwoods. There's like, it's just an amazing place. And you find yourself, your senses opening up, and then you come back to the East Bay, and there's all this traffic, and there's all these people, and there's way too many stores. You could get anything here, and noise and lawnmowers and weed blowers, and there's no ravens. It's just a really and then I felt so thin-skinned that when I would meet with people that I had known that were just acquaintances, and they wanted to know everything about how my program went, and I would say, "Oh, it was wonderful," and it was awful, because I hadn't really melded the whole experience and understood what was going on, because I was really lonely. But then when I came back here, there's like very few people that I want to connect with. I found that I've become way too truthful.
So, Linda, let me go ahead and open up first to those in the panel. Do you have any questions for Linda about the Artist in Residence program? Any comments? Have any of you contemplated? I know, Barry, I think you are in the process of applying to some of those programs. So I'd love to hear any questions or comments you have. And if you want to just throw your hand up if you'd like to hop in, I will pull you into the live session.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha, Barry. And then I'll go to Helen.
Well, I guess my my main question, which I asked at the beginning, is more about the selection of work that you sent to them, the imagery and how important that was. Not the quality, that's obvious, but whether you gave them a diversity of work, what chronologically did you send them? Was it mostly the most recent work, or exactly what did you sort of anticipate in order to help them to choose you?
Yeah, how many images were you able to send in, Linda?
I believe there were 10, and what I tried to do, Barry, was take. I really didn't go into the past. I mean, the dancers and stuff that have really nothing to do with what I'm doing now, except motion. But I tried to show a progression of what different the different things I've tried with pouring medium, and how it would benefit how I might end up being able to do what's on the screen right now with the medium.
And so did you those 10 images that you sent in, as Barry was kind of alluding to, were those mostly fairly recent works, or did you reach back into your archive a bit to show that progression?
I showed a couple of my big abstract dancers that were motion based. In fact, I think I only showed one, but just to establish that this is what I've been doing for, since I started to find voice with art, and then went into the big like in the beginning of this series of this show here, the big non-objective abstract pours that also are motion-based, and then translated it into the motion-based, more abstract underwater pieces, and then into the really more detailed underwater pieces, to just kind of show them, what their trajectory has been, and what they might, what I feel I can do with this medium. Does that help?
Yeah. Let me go. Barry, any follow-up questions with that one?
No, that's okay.
Okay, great. Let me hop over to Helen then, and then I'll get Anne in. Morning, Helen.
Morning. This is from someone who knows I'm never going to be able to do a residency like that, because however supportive my spouse is, at that point he'd go, "You're leaving home for how long?" So I was wondering, I think that would be a bridge too far. So it sounds like you gained a lot of focus and a lot of sensitivity to your work. And I'm wondering if there's a way you might have achieved at least some of that without the residency. Like if you rented studio space near a woods and said, "I'm going in there for 12 hours a day without interruption and walking in the woods and painting trees." Could you have captured any of that experience without leaving home, so to speak?
Probably. It's also a matter of, for me anyway, it was really a matter of alone time. Like, and I know it's crazy to think that you get to that age, and when you get there, you realize, wow, I've never lived alone. What the hell? I mean, but it was like being alone and not letting anybody else distract you. And this, I guess, the reason that, you know, the other artists and I didn't really connect that much is that we were just all kind of interior. So if you can find a way to get interior, and if you could find a way to do it on a shorter period, do you think he'd let you, you know, he'd be okay with a month? You could do a month.
I don't know, and it's not a matter of him letting me. I mean, I've been on school, but I feel like it would almost be asking too much of him, you know. So it's that. But I don't know, the shorter time period, that would be my other question. How long did it take? It sounded like your first month or 2 or 3, you weren't really immersed or getting into it. So, you know, would a month?
It'd be a very different experience, right? If it was just a couple of months as opposed to that longer period.
I think that may be just me, Helen. I have a lot of expectations of myself, and I also I'm not always really good at switching from. I'm good at left, but it's really hard to go from there to right brain immediately, you know. And one day maybe I'll remember.
Yeah.
Triggers. But one thing I wanted to say to you, girlfriend, you know, not everyone, a month might be just enough to let you really get into it, and you may not need to like confront yourself. Apparently I did. You know, there's a lot of people that are actually, you know, a lot more solid than apparently I was.
Well, and let me kind of follow up on that and ask you this question, and maybe there's no good answer to it, but if kind of knowing what you know now and having had the experience, would you do 7 months again, or maybe not again? Maybe the better way to say it would be, if you could travel back in time and have the opportunity to kind of do it over again, would you go for that full period, or would you think about maybe just having done it for a shorter time?
Yes, but I think I would have taken an entire month off between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Yeah, I think I was very sad to end it. And it was wonderful to have the art show up with all the artists in residence. We did an art show at the end, but it was really hard to leave, because I felt like I was just really getting it happening. And but the thing that I have learned since then is that you don't leave that experience behind. You take it and you use it. You know.
Yeah.
I could see you having fun with that, Helen, in a Western setting.
Yeah, I guess I was fantasizing about, you know, taking up residence in a ghost town and spending some months there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let me pull Anne in if I can. I think we have time for just one more question or comment. Good morning, Anne.
Hi, Linda. I'm fascinated by your journey. You go, girl, because I only started painting full-time last year at 55. I was like, you know, I'm not getting any younger. So, but did you start off with other mediums before going to pouring? Because I'd like to follow your journey. It just seems really cool.
Thank you. There's probably more of the older stuff on old Facebook posts than anything else, but I started out as in acrylics, and was playing with gel mediums until after 9/11, and then I found that I really needed to paint people and try to connect with. Anyway, that long stuff, but yeah. But it's always been about motion and energy. It's kind of cool to see that, even though your trajectory is, or you've taken different paths, to see where it's all coalesced and what it's pointing to. It's nice.
Well, Linda, thank you so much. And Barry just asked, and I'll throw it out there. Linda Ryan is the name, and I did not. Several of you submitted your experiences that you'd had with artist in residence programs. I didn't even get a chance to share those. But if you sent one of those to me, and obviously I didn't get to it, if you would just copy and paste that over onto our LinkedIn group. To share those, there were some interesting insights and diverse experiences. It sounds like a number of you have had opportunities for programs like this, and just a really unique opportunity. I will admit that I'm a little bit jealous hearing the experience. Obviously. Probably not any gallery owner in residence programs that I'm aware of out there, but I'd sure be tempted. If there were, maybe we'll develop one or something. Yeah, who knows? But thank you so much, Linda, for sharing your journey and your experiences. Certainly I can see, and I think all of us can kind of see the some of the challenges and difficulties that would be incumbent in a program like that. But wow, what an awesome opportunity to just be really focused and to push your work forward. And we appreciate you taking the time to share with us. Thanks to everyone for joining in the broadcast this morning. And of course, we'll be back here next Friday morning for another Q&A session. And I'll look forward to seeing you then and being in touch in the meantime via email. Take care, everyone.